Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit about a project I've been doing called the Pirate Bay. I'm going to talk about my new project called Flatter. And I just want to say it's very fun to be in Lithuania because everything feels like me. I'm half Finnish, half Norwegian. I live part-time in Sweden, and everything in Lithuania seems to be a bit Finnish, Norwegian, Scandinavian mixture, actually. So, a little bit about my background. As I said, I'm from different parts of Scandinavia. I got my first computer when I was 9. It was an Amiga 500, and it was really amazing. I had no friends besides my brother that used computers, and it was totally new. This was 23 years ago, so I'm quite old. And in order to use my computer, I had to copy everything. So all the games, all the software, everything was copies from friends or new friends, and we were sending floppy disks in this old thing called postal mail, where you put things inside an envelope and you pay to send it somewhere. It's really strange. And I kind of realized when I grew up that we never discussed copyright, if it's legal or not legal to copy things. And I've been growing up with doing that, and it turned out it's illegal. And I didn't really agree to the concepts that I saw was being portrayed as being illegal. And myself being a copy, and I started seeing movies like this. This is from the Anti-Piracy Agency.
Jackie and I are on a mission to stop piracy.
If this were a movie, we could take on the bad guys ourselves.
But this is the real world. We need your help.
When you buy pirated movie and music, you support criminals.
Now these criminals are counterfeiting other things, like electronics and medicine.
Take action.
Demand the real thing.
Help us stop piracy.
Let's terminate it.
Yeah, so I don't really think that if I download a game or a movie that I will help terrorists win. So seeing all of this propaganda from these big corporations, especially from Hollywood and the record industry, made me quite upset. So I joined a Swedish group called Piratbyrån. And Piratbyrån means the Bureau for Piracy. And it's a wordplay because there was a group in Sweden called Anti-Piratbyrån. And they, of course, needed someone to hate. So we started that group. And we did a lot of projects. We went out on 1st of May and demonstrated, said that everyone needs 100 megabits or we won't have welfare in Sweden. And now everyone has 100 megabit of fiber in Sweden if they want to, so we managed that. And we did lots of different projects like this, and the most famous one is probably the Pirate Bay. And the reason for starting Pirate Bay was that we wanted people to understand that there's a new technology called BitTorrent. And I don't know how much you are into technology, but BitTorrent it's much better than every other file sharing protocol because you can share files with thousands of people at the same time. So you just share small bits and pieces of the file you want to a lot of people at the same time. So it's very fast and it's very good. And we also wanted Swedish people to have a place to file share, to talk about file sharing and everything. So we had a forum and all of that. And it was quite interesting because at this time, BitTorrent was very new. And most of the people that were running BitTorrent sites were like 15, 16-year-old kids. And when Hollywood started realizing that this was happening and it was hard to stop, they started sending legal threats saying, we're going to sue you for all the money in the world to these 15-year-old kids. And they, of course, closed down their site. But we decided that we would not do that with the Pirate Bay. And Pirate Bay grew and grew. And I remember when one Spanish file sharing network closed down, all of them moved to Pirate Bay because it was essentially the only other file sharing system that they knew about. And Pirate Bay was in Swedish. And all of a sudden, like 80% of the content was in Spanish. And the site is still in Swedish. And the most downloaded torrent was actually a Swedish language course. So we should have an award from the Swedish government for helping to spread the language. But instead, Pirate Bay grew, and I'm just going to brag a bit. So I'm going to show you some statistics of, kind of old statistics. It's bigger now. This is a year old. So when this statistic was taken, we had 100,000 computers connecting every second to our system to ask about other computers in the world that have a material that they want. And that's quite a lot. And that meant that Pirate Bay was mediating 60 to 65% of all traffic on the BitTorrent networks. And I think it's maybe up to 80% right now. And if you don't know how big BitTorrent is, it's over 80% of the traffic on the whole internet. In every cable, there's going to be 80% traffic, which is BitTorrent. So about half of all the traffic on the internet cables is uses of the Pirate Bay. And if you compare that to other websites, we spent maybe 1 hour of work. We were 3 people when it was at the top. And funny things happened, like Frederick, who is a friend of mine from Pirate Bay, he drinks quite a bit. And one time he tripped over a cable in the server room. So Pirate Bay went down for 2 days. And half of the traffic of the internet just went away because of him being drunk. It's a strange thing. So to get to that level, Pirate Bay, of course, grew, and we got our share of these legal threats. And this is what we did with them. We responded to them. Most people were just obliged. Like even the paper they sent these legal threats on were more expensive than the money we make in a day. And we just said, we're going to reply, and we're going to be just as obnoxious as they are, but we're going to do it in our own way. So when they send things saying, you're breaking American law, this and this, we sent, first we sent a picture of the world, showing, here is the United States, here is some water, here is Sweden. We're not part of your United States, so we have different laws. And they didn't really know how to respond to that. And we also sent this picture, which is probably my favorite one. It's a polar bear, and we said, you have this copyright issue? Well, which is the worst, copyright being broken, or polar bears eating you in the streets? You know, that's our reality. And they, of course, didn't know how to reply to that either. This is one of the funniest ones as well. The thing we did is, all of the legal threats we got, we responded to them and we published them on our website. They're still there, so you can go there and see them. This is my favorite because it shows how clever we are sometimes. I like to brag sometimes. This is from a German company called Linotype, and they're very famous because they own a lot of fonts. So when you use Word or any other software like that, you will use different fonts that they own. They own Helvetica, which most people here have probably used. And they sent this list of fonts that were available for download via the Pirate Bay. And they sent a contract that we had to sign. So they wanted us to pay 25,000 euros and to stop allowing people to download these things and say we're sorry and all of that stuff. So we came up with this really clever response. So we inverted the legal threat and said that they had to pay us money and they had to stop sending us legal threats and all of this, word by word. And we, of course, used all of the fonts that they complained about. Yeah. And the sad thing is, when you do something which you think is so clever and so funny, you don't get a reply back. That's really sucky. So Pirate Bay became really, really huge. And we had a party started in Sweden. I think there's also a pirate party in Lithuania now. But the pirate party has nothing to do really with the Pirate Bay, but it's kind of the same the things we were discussing spawned this party, which is now in 30 countries, I think. And in the Swedish election, they got 7.2% of the votes for the European Union Parliament. So we have 2 people from the Pirate Party that comes from Sweden that are now parliamentarians in the European Union, only talking about these issues that we care about, like file sharing and internet freedom and democracy and so on. And they joined the Green Group, which is the biggest Green coalition in Europe, which is maybe 20% of the European Union, and they agreed to vote as the Pirate Party on these issues. So it's becoming quite big. And Pirate Bay became also a movement in itself. Besides just spawning parties, we also started doing things that we thought were really important for the internet. For instance, there was a big case in Denmark where the Russian site allofmp3.com was shut down. And the Danish court said that if you bought music from all of MP3, even though it's legal, because it's in Russia, it would be illegal for the internet providers to have the copy in their cables. So you paid for the music, but the ISP would break the law by allowing someone to download, because they didn't have the copyright for the music, which is just strange. And they won all the way to the Supreme Court. And in Scandinavia, most of the ISPs work in all the countries. So one ISP in Denmark said, well, we will block all of mp3.com even in Sweden, because we're going to use this as a PR campaign and said that we are on the side of the artists. And we were quite upset because they were starting to censor the internet and say what's good and what's bad on the internet, and making their own judgments on what actually is good and bad without even having a court case to show. So we started blocking all of their users. So when you went to the Pirate Bay from this internet provider, you would see a big sign saying, hey, your ISP is the worst in the world. Here's the phone number to their support, and here's a ready-made email where you will say that, I will change to another ISP. And after maybe a couple of hours, the CEO of this company called me up and said, what if we make a deal that we will never block the Pirate Bay? I said, no, we don't care about that. We just want you to not block the internet. We want internet to be free. And he was really upset because this was this big PR campaign for them, and they were like really scared of going back on it. So they lost 20% of their customers in 2 or 3 days because people were really upset. And after a week, the CEO got fired. Very good. And they removed the block. So another thing we're famous for is that some of you might have heard, we tried buying a nation, an own country. It's called Sealand, and it's outside of the UK. It's a small nation. It's a small platform from the, I think, First or Second World War. And it was taken over by some pirates in the 70s or 60s. And they made their own nation. And it was up for sale. And we said, we're going to buy it. So we started a small campaign on the internet, and we got it. In 2 days, we got $25,000 to buy this country. And we wanted to make it our own country where we would have no copyright, and we would have great hosting and everything, and we would just like change everything. And this was, of course, somewhat of a joke, even though most people didn't get it. So Disney and Warner Brothers and all of these companies, they were really scared. And I remember 2 days after we did this project, which was kind of drinking too much beer and eating pizza, there was the Larry King show, I think, on CNN, or one of these big American channels, where the Prince of Sealand came to discuss with Warner Brothers about what would happen if we bought the country. And in the end, they wanted $6 billion US, so we didn't have enough money for it. So we kind of lost that one. So all of these big corporations in the US, they don't really understand us. So like, we're really good with the internet, we do really crazy stunts, and we're really hard to understand. So they said we were weird and we were part of a cult or whatever, because they didn't realize. And then we said, well, we're artists. So we bought an old bus in Stockholm, and we went from Stockholm, 23 people, to northern Italy and exhibited our bus as art and said, Pirate Bay is an ongoing art collection. It's a project, it's an art project. So they're like, what's wrong with these people? They had no clue. And what you do, if you're from the old world, you send private investigators after people. So we had, with 3 of us from Pirate Bay, we had private investigators following us around for a couple of weeks, which is a really interesting thing. If you've seen movies, you think you know how it works, but actually they're quite stupid. I can tell you also, it's very hard to find out information about what's going on the internet if you follow people outside of the internet. And also, we're kind of strange people. So let's take Gottfried, for example. He was followed for 6 weeks. They saw him once. The reason is he never goes out because he's with his computer all the time. So they saw a guy coming with 2 pizzas to his place and leaving with 2 empty boxes. That's kind of what, they had 1 A4 page of information about what Gottfried did for those 6 weeks. And then we have Frederick, who likes to go out, and they had so much paper from him because they had to go to every bar in Gothenburg, have to go to different girls like every other night and stay outside of their house. And it was like from 5 p.m. till 5 a.m. every day that they followed him around to different clubs and everything, because he's a crazy guy. And I found out about the private investigator because I was going from my home to get some pizza. I don't know what's up with the pizza, but it's main dish apparently. And on my way back, it's like late in the evening, it's very dark outside, and there's a really expensive car in my street, and there's no expensive cars where I live. And all of a sudden, there's a big flash inside the car, and just the whole car lit up. And I'm like, what's going on? And it's a Danish car, it's in Sweden. So it's like, what? This is strange. So I go over to just see who this guy is, or what he wants. And he just starts just driving really fast, and the wheel is spinning and everything. It's like from a bad Hollywood movie. And I know how to use the internet. So I took the number of the car, and I searched on the internet who owns this car. And if you ever want to become a private investigator, don't have a company called Private Investigators Limited and then register your car to that company. Top tip. So in the end, they didn't realize anything about us. They didn't know anything how to, make us do what they wanted. So in the end, the US foreign minister invited the Swedish Minister of Justice to come over to speak at the White House about the issue of Swedish fallskärmar, which essentially was the issue of us three. And after a couple of weeks after that trip, there was a big raid in Sweden. So I think 52 or 53 police officers went to 10 different places because they couldn't obviously see the picture on the website with the GPS map of where the servers were. So they just tried to find out where everything was, and they took all of our machines. And they probably thought that would be the end of it. Like, they took the servers and we wouldn't do anything anymore. But we're not that clever all the time. So we said, well, we'll get this site back up. And usually it would take quite a while for people. But we, the system was very small, and we decided to do it as fast as possible. So after one day of party, we set the server up. So it took 3 days in total. And on the day that we got the servers up, there was a big demonstration in Sweden, where young people came to demonstrate outside of the government building because we found out that the US was behind all of the raid, and people were really upset in Sweden. And we could see that there was a big generational thing here, because usually when you go out and protest, it's going to be higher wages, whatever. But this is the thing we saw, and this banner says everything. It says, I don't think people speak Swedish here, right? No, not that many. It says, give us the server, or we're going to take your fax machine. So it said a lot. Pirate Bay grew quite a lot. So we went from being maybe one of the 6,000 biggest websites and today I think Pirate Bay is number 60 in the world. So it's quite big. And we started getting invited to speak at different places. People started taking us seriously. Some of us has released books and everything, and then you're a serious person, even though it's the same things you write in your blog. And this is, for instance, me and Richard Stallman. I think 2 years ago, we went to Brazil, and we met with the Brazilian president, Lula, who's a really nice guy. And these are the things that are happening. Lula is very cool because he came up to me and just gave me a big hug. And he's this short, so it was really strange. This little man gave me a big hug, and I didn't say hi or anything. He just came over and gave me a hug. And then he said, Peter, we don't have an extradition treaty with Sweden, so you can come here. He's a really nice guy. So, but there is a problem here somewhere. And what is the problem? It's not really that copyright is making, companies rich or whatever. It's that they want to control people. That's the big problem. And we have different views on this. So the big corporations are scared that people don't pay for the things they have. And on my side, I'm annoyed that I have too much information. So I have so much information, so I can choose. And if I would pay for every single song that I've ever downloaded, I wouldn't have any money left at all. If you want to fill an iPod legally with music, it would be one of the most expensive things in your life you'll ever pay for. More expensive than a house in most cases. So in comes my next project, which is called Flatter. And since I'm going to try and drink some water, I'm going to show you a video.
On the internet, you can create or take part of content. When you create, there's not really a good way to get money for the content. And when you find something you like, there's no good way to show love for it. This problem is universal. For bloggers and their readers, musicians and their listeners, photographers, film creators, programmers, and so on. So we created Flatter to solve this. This is how it works. Every month, the Flatter user pays a small fee. Let's compare it with birthday cake. When you have a cake, you want to give slices to the people you like. Flatter helps you do that. If you've created something, you can add a Flatter button to your content. Or if you find something you like, and there's a Flatter button besides the content, you click it. Each button is a counter showing how many people are willing to give cake for the content. At the end of the month, your cake is sliced in as many pieces as you clicked Flatter buttons. Each slice is then given to the correct content creator. If you click 10 buttons, the 10 creators will get a 10th of the cake each. If you click 100 buttons, the 100 creators will get 100th of the cake. The slices might be small, but everyone's slices will all add up. Or as we say in Sweden, många bäckar små blir en stor å. As a creator, you will get money you've never got before. As a consumer, you can help creators out with just a small click. If you haven't guessed it, flatter is a wordplay of flatter and flat rate. With a flat rate fee, you can flatter people.
So the idea with Flatter is that we realize that the biggest problem is not that people are not willing to give money. It's that people don't have an option on how to give money as easily as they get information. So we've always been making it very easy on the internet to get information, but we made it harder and harder to pay for anything on the internet. So 10 years ago, it was really hard to download things, but it was really easy to log into your bank account. And today, you have to have like these different gadgets in order to do that. And it's getting more and more expensive with fees and everything. So that's the big problem with paying for creative content. It's not that people don't want to. And there's a lot of things which is more interesting to give money than just giving them to the old record companies or anything like that. So without the internet, that would probably still be the case. But today we have so many different user-generated content sites that we put up so much information on that it's much more valuable. And this is where we should spend our money rather than giving it to different companies that take a big portion of the money. And I'm going to go to a little history thing here when it comes to this thing which I want to see as a paradigm shift. So a long, long, long time ago, there was movies without color. It's actually true. And there was no sound in these movies either. So every time when you went to the theater, there would be people in front of stage that would actually play music live. So they would play the piano and guitar and everything. And when someone invented the movies with sound, they were really upset. And they said, we will not make money anymore because we will be out of a job. And the movie industry tried to actually themselves stop this from happening. They tried to ban the sound movies. And that was quite stupid, because we realized afterwards that they made more money from having color and sound, obviously. And music is even more progressed, if you want to see it as that. Like a really long time ago, if you wanted to make money as a musician, you either played like at a theater or you played in the streets, and that's how you made your money. Then came the record. And people said, well, if we have records, people will not pay us to play music anymore, because they will just buy it once and then it will play it forever at home. It's going to destroy the music industry. And it turned out afterwards that what actually happened is that they got so much more money than ever before. And then came radio, and you know what happened? They said, we will not make money anymore at all. People will just listen to radio and don't buy the records. And then they realized that radio made people buy more records and made people buy radios, transmitters and everything. And people were really into this. And they paid license fees to get to listen to the music. And it turned out radio was one of the best things for the music industry ever. Then came the cassette player. And people said, we have to ban it because they'll record the music from the radio and they will not pay for it anymore. And this goes on and on again. So every time there's a new technology, there's this paradigm shift, and the industry is really scared because they lose control a bit more every time. So then they invented something which was clever. They invented the CD. And the CD idea they had was that it would be a read-only object. So you couldn't copy it, and it would be better quality than cassettes. So you wouldn't want the cassettes because it's a better product with the CD. And the thing they didn't realize is that they digitalized all the music. So they made it available in a form where you could compress. So without the CD, we wouldn't have MP3s. And without that, we wouldn't have an easy way to share music. And with the internet, which is decentralized, and with the music and all of the digital files, we have made some sort of a democratization, where everyone has the same possibility and the same power to share information. And this goes, today, right now, we're talking about music and movies because it's the first step, but that's not going to end. It's just the start of what's going to happen with the digitalization. The biggest thing, obviously, is that we don't have as many middlemen as before. We don't need them. We don't need anyone to decide which music is good or bad. We'll do that ourselves. We don't need anyone to print CDs and send them to different shops and go there to buy them. We don't need to have shelves that we put these on. Everything is small and easy to handle, and we just don't need the middlemen anymore. And those are the people that always scream that they need regulations so they can still be a middleman. And when it comes to this thing about copying, this is something we can't really legislate against, because people have always been copying. Like every time you meet someone, you mimic them a bit. That's a copy. Every time you learn something new, someone already knew that. That's also a copy. We just don't think about it. Do you know why you're doing this when you're drinking tea? So hands up, how many people when they drink tea lift their little finger? Honestly. Okay, a couple of them. Okay. Do you know why? You probably don't know why. So this might be an urban legend, but there is some truth to this. It's actually that people that were kind of farmers and so on, they were looking up to the rich people and all of the royalty in the 15th, 16th century. And they saw that when they were drinking, they always lifted the little finger. And there was no reason for it. A lot of people think that it's because of balance or weight or anything, but it's not. It's just that you saw people do it, you started mimicking their behavior. And the reason why the royal people did it was because they had lots of orgies. And when you had orgies, you start spreading diseases because you didn't have any protection. And when you get syphilis, the first thing that happens is that your little finger will get stiff if you don't treat it. So that's why you're still lifting your finger. It's a sign of syphilis. So, copying might not always be good, but it's always there, and we can't really treat it. You can't treat syphilis. So, a lot of people always want to say that this thing with the internet and everything, it's a revolution. But a revolution is a couple of people that are fed up with something, and they make like an explosion happen. And with a revolution, you can usually find a couple of people who are like the targets, like the prime people that instigated the revolution. And when you see what's happening with the internet and technology, it's not really a revolution. It's what this guy, Darwin, he called an evolution. Because we can see all the time that it's just small steps that is going on. It's like, we improve a little bit. So we got the CD, then we got the internet, and we saw that we could make these combined together. It's not really a revolution. But evolution is quite fun. Because it means that if you look historically at things, you can also see the future of it. And I'm sorry for the organizers, because I'm not going to be 50 minutes. I'm going to be 30 minutes. Maybe we can have some questions anyhow. Oh, now they're scared. But the thing is, evolution. So if you look back 30 years, and you saw the CD, it was this super high-tech cyberspace product. And people were really, they didn't understand it. And then there came the CD burner, which was maybe 10,000 euros for a CD burner, and you paid 40 euros for an empty CD. And today, a CD burner is something people throw at you. You don't want it. You don't want it in your computer. It takes energy from your computer. You just don't want it. And if you want it, it's going to be maybe 1,000 times faster. It's going to be, you get paid to get it. You don't want it. So everything is changed because of new technology. So if you see what used to go on and you look a bit in the future, you will see things like this, which is happening today. This machine is called a RapRap. It's a 3D printer. So you can physically print objects, which you download from the internet. I have a friend who has one of these machines, and every time there's a party at his place, he starts printing out glasses for people, because he don't want to go out and buy them. So he downloads physical glasses and prints them. Pirated glasses, actually. Very cool design. And this is not the future. This is now. Even though it's just plastic, you can still create things. And it's the same legislation that goes for this, that goes for normal file sharing of music and movies. And if you look into maybe another 30 years, when this machine is a bit more evolved, it will be maybe shoes, or maybe a pair of jeans, or why not a piece of plastic for your car, like a replacement part for your Volvo that you just crashed. And this is what we should think about when we discuss file sharing and all of these copyright issues. This is the future that we're breaking if we don't understand it. So not even 30 minutes, sorry. Thank you. Can we do some questions? It's fine. If anyone has any questions at all. There's questions. Do we have a microphone? I was told I had 50 minutes, and then I don't know what happened. It's over there.
That was great.
Thank you.
I'm on Flutter now. Do I have to put my credit card and then when I click the button, I give money to the publisher? How it's work there?
So Flutter is easily put. It's Facebook-like with money on top. So essentially what you do is that you make an account with us and you put money in. So you have like a small bank account almost. And you decide how much money you want to spend each month. It's minimum €2, but you can spend up to €100 per month. And as in the video, we just remember how many buttons you clicked and share the money equally. So it's a very fair system that you decide how much you want to pay yourself, you decide who you want it to go to, and you don't think about price at all, because we wanted to remove this price tag thing, because information only has the value that the person that gets the information puts on it. So that's the biggest thing with Flutter, is that there's no set price. It's up to you to decide that. And right now, there's a lot of people that make quite a lot of money. It's some bloggers are making over a couple of €1,000 per month on this and live from the income from Flutter. And it's, I think we opened in August last year, August, September, something. And it's still growing. We haven't done any marketing or anything like that. And it's really cool to see. And now I actually have more stuff to say. One thing I really like about Flutter is actually that it's up for anyone to use. So we don't want to differentiate between consumer and producer, because that's essentially the same thing on the internet. So a German newspaper called Heise, I think, I'm not sure if that's the one, they have Flutter on all of their articles, so you can Flutter every article they have. But they also allow you, as a commenter, to put a Flutter button next to your comment. So once I saw this article that had 20 Flutters, and they made some money from that, but I saw a comment that had 40 Flutters. So that meant that the comment was more interesting than the article itself, which makes the relationship between the producer and consumer to be very different, because who's really the producer at that time? And I just like that concept very much. Any more questions? Oh, a small clap.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation you gave here. I just got one question. While you were talking about the start of Pirate Bay and so on, the question is quite simple. You said that you weren't making any money, but how did you, where did you get the money to buy the bus, for example?
Well, Pirate Bay have advertisement on it, and it's really crappy advertisement, because what happens is that if you want to do ads on Pirate Bay, you're brave, because there will be someone from a fancy lawyer office calling you and say, we're going to sue you for aiding with economical aid with possible assisting with copyright infringement. That's actually true, that's what they say. So there is some advertisement, doesn't pay all the bills. I think Pirate Bay owes quite a lot of money to different host providers. But the goal with Pirate Bay was never to make money. It was to make people have a place to share information and not censor it. Any more?
Hi. Thank you very much for a nice presentation. I have a question. As far as I know, Flutter was one of the few providers who were supporting WikiLeaks and accepting payments for them.
Yes.
I was wondering, could you share a bit more about that story? How did that go? How many attacks did you get, and so on?
Well, as you probably, I don't know how big WikiLeaks has been in Lithuania, but I probably quite big as it's been all over. But Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal, and all of these companies, they're quite upset with WikiLeaks, because apparently WikiLeaks wants to release some banking details. So they said, we need to stop these criminals. So they didn't allow people to pay money to WikiLeaks. And we said, you are assholes. You have to allow people to pay for whatever they want. And you can pay the KKK, you can pay the extreme right-wing organizations, you can pay oil bought from Gaddafi with credit cards, but you can't pay money to WikiLeaks, which is kind of a crazy thing. And people came to Flutter because, there's this long story of relationship between Pirate Bay and WikiLeaks and so on as well. So WikiLeaks has been hosted by a company called PRQ, which is founded by the same people that run Pirate Bay. And we've been hosting them since 2007 or something like that. So Flutter was kind of a default thing where, no one called us from the US government to ask us if we could close down WikiLeaks, because we would make a big spectacle out of that and say, here's even more proof that you're idiots. So they didn't they didn't do that. Instead, we got actually some awards from different artists in Sweden that's, for fighting for this global thing to make transparency and so on, for helping WikiLeaks, which is kind of strange. We gave the award money to the Bradley Manning Defense Fund, which you also should support, all of you, because he's a really important guy to support. But basically that's the story, and Flattr is still the only option you could use to give money to WikiLeaks, which is a shame. There's one.
I would like to ask about the Pirate Bay. How did you deal with the really harmful content on the Pirate Bay?
Sorry, can you speak?
Yeah. How did you deal with the really harmful content on the Pirate Bay, if there was such like child pornography? And did you have any clear guidance for the users regarding their content? And if so, where is the line you drew to separate the harmful content?
Sorry, can you say the last part again?
And where is the line where you drew, if you did so, where you drew the line between the harmful content like child pornography and every other content? Thank you.
Yeah, so the line on Pirate Bay and censorship has always been that if it's legal to have the content in Sweden, because that's the only law we really knew, we allowed people to share that information. And child porn is not legal in Sweden. But there was never really a case with child porn on Pirate Bay, because essentially if you put something up on Pirate Bay and you see that for people, your IP will show. So no one is stupid enough to put child porn on the Pirate Bay, because they will be reported to the police in a second. Because it's like being on the middle of a square and saying you're going to kill this kid. It's the same thing. It's so obvious. So that problem has always solved itself. There's also never been problems with normal porn ending up in the normal movie category. People are kind of taking care of that. So it's always been. I trust people quite a lot. I think that people can show that they manage to have a civil society even on the internet without laws and too much regulation.
Peter, when is the plan to take Flattr to real life? What if I want to give something to you or to the person who spoke before? Or an artist standing outside with my iPad, with my iPhone application?
Yeah, so first of all, you shouldn't use in real life as a term. Because internet is actually for real. You're the same person on the internet. It's just another side of you. So I prefer the term away from keyboard. And that might be broken as well with all of the iPads. So away from Apple products maybe might be the new thing. But there is a QR code on every Flattr thing that you can print and you can show to people. So on my Android phone, not an iPhone, I can use the Flattr application to, yes, thank you. There's a Flattr QR application, so I can flatter people using QR. And we displayed this quite heavily last week in South by Southwest, which is a big conference in the US, which I can't go to, so someone else did. For many reasons, actually, I can't go there. I'm not going to go into all of them, but it was some street musicians actually used the QR codes out on the street, so if you passed them, you could flatter them, which was kind of cool. Any more?
Hi, me. Hi.
Sorry.
Are you planning to integrate the Pirate Bay with Flattr? That would be quite a team up.
Well, I wouldn't do it myself. I'm not running Pirate Bay anymore, and I hope that they do it in the future. But right now, it would be a pain in the ass for me to handle that publicity, so I hope they don't do it right now. Okay. There's some more. And I'm really sorry to the organizers. I thought I would be 50 minutes, actually.
Hi. I think just recently Google announced that it's going to not show BitTorrent on his search or something like that. It was an announcement. What's your attitude towards that? Because it's not like censorship. It's just one company, but it's a main company. And
yeah, so that's a big problem at all when it comes to the internet, because we give away all of our information to these corporations, and we trust them quite immensely. And Google is just one example. They are censoring torrents from like these direct searches. When you start writing something, they will give you suggestions, and they will never give you a suggestion that contains the word torrent, even though that might be the most searched key phrase. So that's a start of censorship. But you don't only have Google as a problem, you also have Facebook, and you have even Twitter to some extent, that all of these big corporations that are, for some reason, all based in the United States of America, following their law, keeping all your data, abusing all your data, making money from it, and don't allow you to even have control over it. And that is something which we try to fight quite heavily against, especially in Sweden. Yesterday, we managed to get the data retention law delayed 1 year in Sweden, and we're really happy about that. I think that's a big problem. It's a big thing that we're going to see the biggest fight of the internet in the future. And I'm really scared of what's going on there. So essentially, I would say be more careful with what you put on the internet and stop trusting the big corporations. Don't put things on the cloud if it's owned by all of these assholes. Use your own cloud, whatever. But be careful, because it's when you give away your content to someone to keep it for you, you lose the control over it, and you're in a bad position. Oh, wow.
I have a question to you. Let's say that I see a homeless man and I decide that he needs something. And then I take your clothes, for example, or your food, and I give it to him. So how would you react?
If you gave my food to a homeless person, I would be super happy.
So you think that
I can get food from someone else? That's fine.
Someone else can decide instead of you.
Well, it depends. Like, if you are an artist and you make music, you can't really say, I don't want this guy to not listen to my music. There are certain rules in society of how people behave and how they will adapt to your music that you follow, that you don't think about, because it's not part of the law. So that's exactly the same as copyright. It's infringing on your personal freedom to do things.
I just think that there should be more friendly way to make content available, not to decide for other people what they should do.
What they should do with the content.
Yes.
But that's never going to happen. You can't change human behavior. So rather, you should adapt to it and see what people have always taken things that belong to them or don't belong to them. And when we talk about immaterial rights, like in digital information, it's even harder, because you can't really say who it belongs to begin with. You can't say that you have control over it. When it comes to physical objects, there's this scarcity. There's not enough of it to go around. Then you have a real market. But when it comes to information that is in digital form, there's no price at all. The price is zero. So you can't really control it in the same way. It's a totally different thing. So I think that if it comes to music or in like any type of information, books, movies, whatever, we need to find an alternative way to finance that, if that is needed at all, because music industry is thriving, they're making more money than before, movie industry is making more money than before, the book industry is making more money than before, and they always complain about not making enough money, because they, of course, want to make even more money. But the reason, the question we should ask ourselves is, how much should we give to them and not to the creators? And how can we give to the creators and not give to these corporations?
But then also another question, music is not something that you can't live without. It's not bread or water.
Well, I think I would rather eat every other day and have culture in my life than eat every day without culture, actually.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think one more, and that's it. If there's one more, was it fine? Okay, it's done. Thank you.